Hello, ladies and gentlemen. It's a chess show on Pod TV. My name is Sasha Star, and today we have Professor Ken Regan. Welcome to the show.
Much for having me on. I'm at home.
Great. Yeah, we can see that. And Professor Daniel Fleetwood. Welcome to the show, Daniel.
Hi, Sasha. Hi, Ken. I'm at the Columbus, Ohio airport, returning from a visit with my high school baseball coach.
Wow.
Ooh,
Good.
very nice.
You
Lots
too.
of fun.
I was tremendously enjoyed with my wife because the Currents Cup played in St. Louis. It was a premier ladies event. 10 players, round robin, traditional time control, if you can call it traditional in a way. But what I noticed, very interesting thing, sometimes they cannot offer a draw. So if it's a drawish position or so on, there's a 3 times repetition, and then there is a draw.
Right.
So that's the only way how you can actually agree to a draw. So what I noticed in many games, when they were repeating position 2 times, then one of the side would avoid 3 times repetition and played something else. In men's chess, you don't see that. If it's a drawish position and you repeat the move, so you repeat 3 times, draw, thank God, okay, so let's go to a pub or anywhere else to celebrate or so on. Not in women's chess, not that they don't like pubs. I think the reason is that women are expecting the other side make a mistake, which is much more likely than in men's chess. That's why they avoid 3 times repetition in absolutely drawish position, because they believe that there still is a chance that her opponent will make a mistake and therefore they will lose the game. Did you find that the same thing, or maybe that's just my perception?
Yeah, there's various generalizations I could possibly make on that if I had access to more data. But you may be right. I mean, it certainly was talked about for the decisive final game because Carissa Yip needed only a draw to win the tournament and achieve her second Grandmaster norm. But
Well,
she
that's a
pressed
unique
on for a win.
situation. Actually, I didn't mean this particular game because that's a unique situation. And even then, the draw was not easy to achieve. Surprisingly, Carissa, who guaranteed herself in the case of a draw first place, and she had tremendous advantage, she wouldn't go for drawish lines and just continue to play for a win, which I must admit is a very brave decision. And I cherish her. But listen, let's not distract ourselves from the games, because the games were very well thought out and very exciting, to tell the truth. And
2 rounds with no draws. Yeah.
commentaries were pretty good. The Grandmaster Skripchenko, I think for the first time appeared in commentaries, and I think she added a lot of experience, understanding, calmness. Uh, I really enjoyed everything. Yasser was, of course, incredible. So
Yeah.
that was a premier event, very enjoyable overall.
That's right. Yeah, it's always good to see my old friend Yasser. We were part of the junior brigade of the 1970s.
Wow.
Uh, so, um, but yeah, no, the tournament got off to a bang with 5 decisive games, and it bears saying that Alice Lee won her first 2 games. Carissa Yip had a minus score after 4 rounds, 1.5 out of 4, and then Carissa Yip reeled off 4 wins in a row, and Alice Lee treaded water and got into that last round where Alice Lee was at 5 and Carissa Yip at 5.5, playing each other in the last round. It's interesting to me
Fantastic.
that the people from the same country were playing in the last round, um, but because they were on 5 and 5.5, it meant that one of them had to reach 6, and that
Yeah.
was more than Humpy Konaru or I forget who else said 4.5.
Humpy Conneru, she was +3 after 6 rounds.
Yeah, she had 4.5 out of
If
6.
she would make 3 draws, she would take first for sure, at least shared first. And all of a sudden, she's losing to all the last 3 games.
But what derailed her is the first game I'm going to show,
yeah.
which has to be definitely called the game of the tournament. So,
Okay.
So let me go into that. Let me share just a tab. Share screen, share tab. Okay. And so this is the round 7 game between Carissa Yip and Humpy Conneru. Carissa Yip at that point had 3.5 out of 6. So she needed to win to catch up to Grandmaster Conneru, and that's what happened, but with quite a lot of adventure and very much uncompromising play. Are you seeing the chessboard?
Yes.
Okay. So how to infuse life into a Ruy Lopez? Well, it helps if black waits a move before playing knight f6. Here we go. And Humpy Conneru goes for the open Ruy Lopez. And maybe a move now, Dan, you can comment on this move. Is this move seeing a revival? Knight c5.
Yeah, makes sense.
Every Friday, once a month.
Not really. Almost everyone's still playing d5 or
Right.
b5 and then d5. So this is she's definitely going her own way here.
Right. Well, so white captures and then recaptures the pawn, and so this is on the other hand, maybe it's a little closer in some ways to some of the other lines reached via the Berlin move order, where trades happen on e5 and the queen stay on. But in any event, it's certainly a dynamic position. And white does have an advanced outpost, a slightly better strong pawn structure. Black has the 2 bishops, but they're not loose yet. So white gathers space in the center. And but I mean, black can be happy with this position. So at least according to the engine evaluation, it's a question of the strategy that goes with it. And so right now, so what are you going to plan to do for white? Well, there's one more natural developing move to make. And black, meanwhile, is trying to rearrange the pieces, bring out the bishop on c8. So black is a little bit behind in development. Time for white to do something. What are you going to do? Well, a very logical thing to do is to play queen b3 to prevent black from moving the c8 bishop. And that's what white did, but it did not prevent black from moving the c8 bishop. In fact, moving the c8 bishop is the Stockfish's choice of move in the upper right-hand corner. So now we're going to get lots of action in the game. And I don't know if this was preparation or not. I don't know how deep the games were prepared. But white now has a damaged pawn structure, but has an extra pawn for the trouble. And here comes what looks like a black attack on the king side, except that black doesn't have any pieces yet that can readily join the attack once the queen comes down. However, a flank attack should be met by a reaction in the center, and indeed is white who is going to go king hunting through attack in the center. So here we go, d5. And so right now, queen h3 doesn't go anywhere. It just allows white to take this pawn and come back to g3 and defend. So black has to defend that diagonal first. Okay. And, well, black is still doing fine, even though it's now a gambit of 2 pawns. White has to tread fairly carefully in this position as well. So white brings up a defender and something to occupy the center. Black plays bishop e5, doesn't want to trade off that bishop. Bishop's on a good square. But the question is, can white dislodge the bishop with f4 in some position? What does black do if white just grabs a pawn, which was the move played? There comes queen f5. So black is definitely committed to getting play on the king side, and the knight, is a very much a latent force. So white has to do something to gain tempi before black can organize an attack, and knight g3 is exactly the way to start with that. And now bishop c5. This is really an all-purpose move. One purpose is that it gives the option of rook e3, driving back black's queen. Another purpose is that if and when black's queen moves, then d6 may force a lot of simplifications in the position. Okay, well, black brings up the knight. Now, knight h4 and checkmate is definitely looming in this position. So here comes the evicting the queen idea. And okay, so now at least knight h4 is not going to be checkmate. And now here comes the d6 forcing simplification idea. Okay, well, it actually doesn't result in simplification. What it results is tactics. This is just pure tactics. So here's a very, very funny point in this position. The computer's best way for black to defend. Well, there are two things black could do. Black could take on d6, okay, and white will capture, and then play h5, having stabilized that part of the board, at least getting rid of white's passed pawn. The other thing the computer says to do is go here, and then when white captures, now capture on c4. And the point is that some light squares will be available to black's queen in lines of the game might follow. For instance, on b3, you can just stick the queen on d5. Okay, same thing in response to other moves, including rook e4. You have the square d5 for your queen. Okay, so it's a very, very subtle difference. What Konarud did was definitely uncompromising. Black equalizes the pawns, probably eventually hoping to liquidate the queen side and be a pawn ahead on the king side. But it allows white to create a Frankenstein monster pawn. Okay, so d7, rook e d8. Okay, now white's rook, of course, supports the pawn from behind. So I wonder what Konarud was thinking. Well, this is a way to get a counterattack. But now white plays b3, and we see a difference. Black's queen does not really have good squares. So the only really serviceable stuff, see, it doesn't have d5, doesn't have e6. It's not supported by a rook there anymore. b5 gives away the a2 to g8 diagonal to white. Queen e6 check would just be dominating. So black at least keeps an eye on the pawn. Okay. So it's also funny is queen g4. Okay, well, queen g4 was the best move. So actually, so let's see. So the engine is saying that black's best is to play for tactics with knight e7. Wow, is this a sharp position? Okay, you can't even rely on the computer evaluation. It's going to swing wildly. So having thought queen g4 is the best move, the computer now gives it a question mark. Okay, but says that white should play queen d5 check and then just start driving black's pieces back. So there is a tactical point about allowing white's knight into the game. So the tactical point is queen d5 check, king h8. You can play the move h3. Now, white still had a fair amount of time. Konarud did not. So maybe white would have found this. And the point is, if you take on a3, of course, then white has a devastating discovered move with the knight. No, that's not true. Actually, white has this very weird move, bishop a7. Okay, so why the queen had to be driven off g4 in order to make bishop a7 work, I don't really know. Actually, the main point is he wanted to reduce the effectiveness of black's counterattack. The latent point in this position is if rook a8, then queen takes a8 and promoting the pawn and checkmate on the back rank. So that's why bishop a7 is winning material. So the point is, you just, by playing h3, you diminish black's counterplay. If white plays bishop a7 in this position, then c6. Boy, I don't know anything about chess. So not knight f. Well, knight f4 is decent too. It forces the queens off and relieves a lot of the pressure on black's position. So anyway, however, that's not what Carissa Yip played. So Carissa Yip calculated something. So she calculated that this move would yes. So this is a great combination. Do I have the right? I don't have the right position. Sorry.
Mhm.
In this position, with queen d5 check not having happened, she calculated rook d4. So queen d5 check was the best move, but she played this, and notice that black's queen is almost trapped. Okay, so driving it to h6, then the white knight move really would be good. But of course, the question is, can black or queen h3, you'd have bishop a7 again. But of course, the question is, can black capture? Okay, now the reason why it looks like black cannot capture is that white goes rook to the a check, can't take it, because then white will promote with mate in the offing. And now bishop takes f8. Okay, the computer actually says white should bail with bishop takes d4. Okay, but bishop takes f8. And now black is lost except for the resource bishop takes f2 check. I don't know if this is the move that Carissa Yip overlooked. I wonder, maybe should have looked for an interview about this. So the point of this move is that if white takes, then rook takes d7 is effective for black, because after this it is checkmate on d1 coming up. Okay, or checkmate by other combinations of moves. So play queen d4 check instead here, and then queen a1 check is the great hidden resource that you have to see the entire chessboard to see. So, however, white does not have to take black's bishop. White could play king g2. And now maybe here is the move that Carissa Yip underestimated. So rook t7, rook takes b8. Okay, now white is still threatening discover check with the bishop and giving checkmate, and black's bishop blocks the check. But now black can play bishop a7. And the same thing with rook d2 check being mate is happening if white simply moves the rook. And white does not have any effective checks in this position. So then black would be winning. So this is what I would say that she overlooked. In this position, actually, white needs to bail out with, this isn't quite the same position. Wait, no, okay, so this isn't the position where you can, so it's the other position. So the best way for white to bail is to capture here after all. And then when black takes this, go into this endgame where usually rook and bishop and knight will overpower a queen. But black has two pawns and white's pieces are uncoordinated. So the computer gives this as advantage to black, although in practical play, I don't think white is desperate here.
Yeah, but it requires a lot of exact play because it's three pieces and they're uncoordinated and don't defend each other for the most part. It's very difficult to have three pieces to coordinate when queen is much easier to figure out what's the best squares to take.
Oh,
Yeah, especially with limited time here, this would be really a real challenge.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's right. Limited change. It reminds me of a game from Norway Chess that I should have hunted up, where Magnus Carlsen was losing and had uncoordinated rook and two knights, and then he suddenly got them together and won.
Mm.
So, so anyway, so that so this, would have been quite a denouement, and I actually maybe if this time will show something. There's in the when I do my full test analysis, which gives values for every move option in a position and gives values at all depths. Rook d4 looks attractive for a long time, and bishop takes d4 looks bad for a long time on the next ply. And my model converts that into projecting a lower probability of bishop takes d4 being played, and also a higher probability of rook d4 being chosen by white than its final value, its final negative value, would lead one to expect. That gives my model a 2 to 3 percentage point advantage in prediction. So it's predicting that this is a fairly, very deep and very hard thing to say, because the values of the moves swing when you start cold and then evaluate the position to low, middle, and then higher depths. So anyway, so Black played knight e7, the move that would have worked before, but it does not work here. White just captures it. So the point was to obstruct rook e8 check briefly, but it's just a fig leaf. Rook e8 check is coming anyway, and after this move, Konoru resigned. White could just as well play king g2. So, very, very enterprising game by both players, but Garcia went for it, and the gamble worked.
Incredible.
Mm-hmm.
In hindsight, I'm not sure why Canero with +3 after 6 rounds. Why did she need all these adventures? I just can't figure out that at all.
Yeah, well, she got led into the adventures by queen b3, bishop g4, risky, but the clear best move in the position. So I'd like to know if Carissa knew that about the opening, that with this line, you have this option of playing a move queen b3 where Black either makes a concession by moving the b pawn or goes into this enterprising line.
But what if to play here with a black b5?
Right.
Was that possible?
Well, it's white plays d5, and so it's.
And if you take on c4 and then d5, what would be the problem to hold this position?
Well, the problem is that white's rooks are about to breathe fire, and black's pieces are jumbled.
Okay, bishop d6, for example. No, d6.
Oh, d6, okay.
Yeah, I would play bishop d6.
Oops, that means something.
It's losing. Yeah.
Oh, a double check. You don't want to allow a double check.
Okay, bishop e6 still.
Oh yeah, double check and mate. Yeah, bishop e6. Yes. So,
yeah, that'd be possible.
So rook a d1. This is the cannon fire I was talking about. Now bishop d6 is what you want to play. So what's happening? I'm worried that let's see. Okay, tactics on c4 on c7 don't work yet. I don't know.
White is better, because of the pawn structure or so on. But I think with 2 bishops, black can just keep going.
Well, I get rid of one of your bishops. This way or
okay.
Dan, yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say it's positions like this that put the Open really out of business for a while, because it was just unpleasant to play this. Just a slight disadvantage because of the pawn structure. So the modern way of playing it is to actually play the main line and then get a pawn down on d3. And there have been some really nice games in
With
those.
Black getting
It's
going to
completely
D3. Wow. Yeah, I wonder if how does that line go? Rook E1 with B5 and then D5.
Yeah, I think it's a classical variation of open roulette.
Yeah, it's the main variation. So
White plays D4, not Rook E1. Yeah.
right.
That's right. Oh yeah, and you're right. White plays C3 and Black can play D4 and D3. So,
Yeah, that's exactly right. And that position is really, really sound for Black.
Okay. So
And there's no way White can avoid it?
There are ways that White can avoid it, but they all give easier equality.
Maybe instead of C3, try knight B to G2.
no.
Yeah, that line was played to death in the 90s.
Yeah, I remember, I think, games, Karpov, Korchnoi, I think they played it a few times. Mm-hmm. Yeah, interesting. It's still,
Yeah, imagine it's when White plays Knight B2 that Black plays D4. So something like maybe castles first or D4. Let's see. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know this line. Actually, you can play this and then maybe play D4. Yes, there we go.
yeah, I think
This is the line you're talking about. Yeah.
Korchnoi played that line against Karpov.
Yeah, it's really dynamic after D3, and the engine finds that it's completely equal.
Mm-hmm. Okay, interesting to know. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, okay, all right. So I just want to show one moment from the critical encounter.
Okay.
So I'm going to go through this more quickly because it's actually not as deep a game. So you're seeing Li Yip from the last round. But so interestingly enough, 4 knights game, or maybe Carissa Yip thought that this would keep her more options of the draw in hand for less risk, as generally, as often is the case in this classical Scotch or 4 knights game. But Alice Lee goes for the gusto here. So after White's H3, White's H3 was a little bit like a red flag to a bull here. Maybe playing Queen D2 or even the E5 move now. So H3 gives Black's G5 move a little bit extra point of a target to hit on G4. But anyway, so Black is going to try to establish a dark square lock and an initiative. And White can just, decide to allow it. But by the way, I want to show one other thing here. Very interesting place where the computer thinks that Black's best move was Bishop A5, but maybe it's not here. Anyway, okay, that's a digression. So Carissa played E5, which has the ultimate point that Bishop H7 check will win Black's queen if all the pieces are traded on E5. So that's what makes Rook takes E5 possible here. But Black just plays calmly. So here, however, though, Alice Lee decided to sacrifice her queen for real. And in fact, maybe Bishop F8 was not great. King G7 getting out of a potential discovered check and proactively defending H6 was a good move in this position. Because after Rook D1, the engine wants Black to admit a mistake by playing Bishop D6. So played this, and this really was a miscalculation. Okay, because White so the Black's idea is White's Rook is under attack, hence Black is going to win the B pawn, and that maybe then the 2 bishops are sufficient counterplay. But actually, White can cold-bloodedly leave the Rook hanging, because after this move, Black's dark squares are going to be a fatal weakness. Knight E4, F6, is coming, and black's pieces are blunted for the most time. So even though white has given up in exchange. Okay, but anyway, however, Carissa acquiesced, and now maybe black has enough counterplay. It's still more than +1 according to the engine, but we'll see how this is played. I'm just going to play a lot of moves because there's one very instructive moment in the end game, and okay, so we won't criticize the play too much. White's idea is to exchange off one of black's bishops, which happens now, and then just try to press and make black unable to cover all of black's weak pawns. So this is a nice way. So general advice, when you're up in exchange, trade the opponent's last rook or whatever. So now white regains the rook, and black has just a rook, does not have two rooks together to coordinate anymore. All right, queen c4. Black could have played h4, which is definitely a good positional move. White should play h4, of course. So that actually is an endgame point. White should last move have played a move like queen a4, attacking something so as to gain a tempo for h4. Don't think time pressure was really important, but black should have played h4 to fix h3 as a weakness and make a nice pawn structure. So f6 looks solid, but it was mistimed. Now black has pawn weaknesses here too, although black's gained a pawn. Maybe that's what she thought would work. So I gotta give back the gained pawn. So it's still black has rook, bishop, and a pawn for the queen. So there's definite fortress possibility. But now we're coming up to the mistake. Okay. So black should hang tight in this position and keep f6 guarded by the king. The rook and bishop guard the other two pawns, and just challenge white to do something. White's king can't cross the e file. Black's king g7, f7 will keep white's king at bay on that side. White king can't even cross these two squares because of the bishop anyway. The only thing white's king can penetrate by is f5. But if black's king is on g7 or f7, then bishop d7 check drives it back. So I really do think this is a fortress draw. But by playing king e6, which looks like an active move, the problem is now black's king can't go back to f7. And now white has a way to get into f5 with the king eventually. Okay, black can only keep it at bay for so long. So in fact, black made a few concessions to at least get the king back there. But now because of the bishop on f7, black's king is still not getting back into the fortress. And now black was forced to shed the pawn. Would have had to shed it if king e7, king f5 anyway. And now white should have a winning advantage, but give Alice Lee credit. She made some counterplay, and white didn't find the most exact moves to win this. So I'm sure the engine could win, but the real life human player did not. Here there could have been many times a repetition just by giving perpetual check. Okay, we forced black actually to improve the position a bit, although a5 is going to fall now. Still, black has gained a few tempi to make this counterattack, and it turns out to be effective. It's hard to pinpoint exactly where white went astray here. It's not clear what white can do, but in any event, after repeating, white played queen e5, a natural move, and now probably analytically the win is gone. Black, we trade these pawns, and white wins this pawn, but this is not a winning position. Here, rather than play through the rest of the game, I'm just going to go to k4 it, the table base, and let's put this in the table base and verify that it's and verify that with reasonable placement of black's pieces. Okay, I have to remember where they were. That this is just a draw. Oh, this one's a win. Okay, so whoops. Oh, maybe I better get the exact position here.
Not so fast.
Not so fast. Let's see. All right, let's see. Queen takes a5. Oh,
Yeah.
okay. So let me actually. All right.
Every piece and every square matters in these positions. Isn't that amazing?
Yeah. Okay. Let me go back here. Okay. Okay. So let's see. So black's king was on b7. The rook was here. Black's bishop was here. White's king is here. But let me do that last. So let's see. So white move says draw. Black move says draw, and king b8 was sufficient to draw. So king c5. How does black draw this? So black. So if it's white to move in this position, then queen b5 is a win. But with black to move, black can draw by putting the bishop anywhere other than d5. So interesting. Okay, a little closer run than I thought, but in any event, duly drawn.
Yeah, it was so exciting tournament, so well organized. You can't wish for anything more than actually happened there. It's impossible. Well, now we still have a lot of new tournaments are coming, and just started this how we call freestyle chess. That, but I'll tell you, my feel is that this format of internet chess actually revives classical game because it's so more interesting to watch with great analysis, and every move is being thoroughly investigated. Then when you see, first of all, this freestyle chess, they're playing 10 or 15 minutes per game in absolutely unfamiliar, absolutely illogical position. So the commentators are getting lost. They don't know really what they're talking about. And it's obvious because nobody knows what they're talking about. They themselves don't understand what they're talking about. There's no analysis of any kinds, and it's too fast and so many games. You cannot watch more than one, maximum 2 games in this format anyway. So this is where classical games absolutely shines. You see the normal game between 2 strong competitors, very good commentaries. I would rather watch this than freestyle or anything like this. But we'll see. Anyway, thank you very much for today's program, and I will see you next week, same place, same time. Thank you very much, everybody.
Okay.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Good. Thanks for being on, Dan. Yep.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. Take care.
Okay. All right.
Bye.